What do you feel when you hear this sound? Now I get it, lots of other channels have used this same exact hook for a video, but they do it because it's special. The sound of that one note. That one note will send you deep into nostalgia of a time long gone, a time you wish you could go back to, because right now, at least in the Halo community, we're a long ways away. So, with that in mind, I decided to play through the original Halo trilogy again, just for fun. I wanted to understand what made the game so special, why it stood the test of time for all these years. Was it the combat, the story, the lore, maybe all three? In my opinion, to make a successful Halo game, you need to abide by these three pillars: discovery, badassery, and emotion. And with that, you need to have a progression with these pillars. That way you stay engaged, the pacing will stay consistent, and makes the narrative that more enjoyable. And for people who need an explanation to what I mean, discovery is simple. You walk through the sandbox and find certain things you have questions about, but keep in mind it must be worthwhile. Discovery is useless when the certain thing you have a question about is dropped or retconned later down the line. Badassery is also straightforward. Awesome, testosterone-fueling moments where you feel like you could take on anything. And emotion is the trickier one. It could literally be anything. Engaging scenes, thought-provoking sections in gameplay, the feeling of hope, music. It could be anything if it successfully provokes positive emotion. A Halo game must have these three pillars. Halo Combat Evolved. Getting into the narrative side of things, Combat Evolved isn't exactly an award winner, but it sets the stage for a story to come soon. What the narrative does do well is set a foundation with the world around you, the characters, the factions, and the setting. The first characters you are introduced to with major importance are Cortana and Captain Keyes. Cortana being an extremely intelligent AI that acts more like a human than a sequence of code. Captain Keyes is the captain of the Pillar of Autumn, the first captain with the UNSC to discover a Halo ring. Cortana acts more like your sidekick throughout the game, providing certain lore bits and exposition during downtime, with Captain Keyes being more of a plot driver. First finding him after the Autumn crashed, then trying to find him again after the Flood outbreak. The main overarching story is pretty simple. Very simple. Find ring, find out what ring does, save Captain, release Flood, save Captain again, and blow up ring. What makes the story click though is the relationship building throughout the story, at least with Cortana. It's hard to explain. It, of course, isn't to the level of The Last of Us or God of War in terms of character building, but for the game that it is and what it's trying to accomplish, it works. Like I said before, Cortana is more of a navigator and lore spewer than anything else, but every so often there are these moments of comedy, personality, and it makes things more entertaining. For example, when Chief first slots her into his helmet, when Cortana goes off on 343 Guilty Spark, when Chief crashes into the wreckage of the Pillar of Autumn, these moments are used sparingly because the story is meant to have a serious tone, but is successful when they do use it. If you asked any Halo fan if the game would be better with Cortana not in it, every answer would say absolutely not. She is part of the soul of what makes Halo CE. Regardless, Halo CE's narrative isn't anything to write home about, but what makes the game kick is discovery. Halo Combat Evolved was one of my first games ever played. I was about 5 years old at the time and had a hand-me-down original Xbox. I remember the games I had at the time were NFL Fever and Pac-Man World 2. I think it was 2, it may have been 1, but I never really played those games. I remember my dad took me to my local GameStop and I saw Halo CE was on sale for like 17 bucks used. You know what, I even still have the case. Here it is, $17.99 from GameStop. I don't even have the disc in here. I think I checked, but yeah, I still have this. And bonus, here's Pac-Man World 2. I was totally right, Pac-Man World 2. I feel the manual inside. Really want to play the repack version. And just for bonus, have this beat up. I think I have like 2 discs in here. Yeah, I don't know why I have 2 discs in here, but yeah, cool thing. I have all of those physical. And the reason I fell in love was because of how much the game focused on discovery, which is crazy to say since the game isn't open world, it isn't an RPG, and really is only like 8 to 10 hours long depending on difficulty, but did it fantastically. Right at the start, you are, for the most part, thrown right into action. We are on the Pillar of Autumn, and we are someone called the Master Chief. Apparently we're being followed by a faction called the Covenant, and after something happened on a planet called Reach. That's all you're given, and before you're thrown into the action. Already you are given questions without answers. Who are the Covenant? What happened to Reach? Who's this Master Chief? Why are we even fighting the Covenant? And eventually, after fighting off the boarding party, Chief and some stragglers fire off a life pod and land on a mysterious ring, a Halo. The Halo ring is a main focal point of the story, of course, the literal title. It's grounded in discovery. Discovering who built this floating space ring, what its purpose is, why is it so important, all very intentional and will always be tied to the main story, which is something I can't say for later titles, at least for Halo 4 and 5. But once you get into the level Halo, the discovery really takes off. One of the best aspects about Combat Evolved has to be with the open level design. You immediately think of levels like Halo, Silent Cartographer, Assault on the Control Room, Two Betrayals, and with these levels comes extreme sense of discovery. But let's focus on the level Halo for now. Right off the bat, after crash landing on the ring, you see built structures. Not Covenant, not human, something completely different, alien, and seemingly ancient. Even Cortana mentions this, although what she says is somewhat obvious. But you already have these questions going through your mind, and it's only the second level. And what makes this more interesting is the fact that the game tries to push you forward on objectives, hurrying to save Marines. It doesn't give you much time to genuinely think about who built these things. And going back to the open level design, this makes it so you discover these different structures on your own. When games give you a linear path, sometimes the discovery comes off as artificial with objective markers and such. This is why so many gamers give critical acclaim to Elden Ring. The game is dead set on having discovery be the main driver of the game. So with that in mind, they made the game open world with 0 quest markers. It's up to you on which path you choose to go. It's up to you to put the pieces together to form a narrative. Now, I'm not saying that Halo CE is Elden Ring, but I'm saying that in 2001, when this game was released, they had somewhat the same vision. You see these structures that pulsate blue orbs into the sky. What's it doing? What's its purpose? Fast forward to Silent Cartographer. That whole mission is dedicated to finding your own path and discovering what this cartographer is. There's the control room you need to get to, and with that, you fight your way through this foreign atmosphere with these futuristic walls, doors, and hallways. The point I'm trying to make here is the discovery is successful not because it's thrown in your face, it's because it's not the center of attention. It's secondary to the main plot. Although it is secondary, it's always shown to you regardless, in plain sight, if that makes sense. It causes the player to always think about the questions they formed before. It's what makes the game great. One of my favorite levels, Assault on the Control Room, is great for the same reasons but on a bigger scale. Deep under the ring's surface, seemingly, there's a weather system. Even more structures that are built that are much bigger. We do have to point out though that this level had heavy copy-pasted walls and areas, literal sections that are the exact same as the previous. This stuff does water down the experience to a certain degree, I don't deny that. But the awe I felt while playing through this, it's just something you can't describe, only feel. And once we get to the ending of the level, Cortana pulls dialogue perfectly here. She tells the chief that Keyes was off to uncover weapons cached somewhere else on the ring, but after Cortana gets into the ring systems and realizes its purpose, and purpose not told to the player yet, she starts to freak out, saying that we need to stop Keyes and get him away from this certain area. No time to even explain to the player what's going on, just find Keyes and do it quickly. We then load into the level 343 Guilty Spark, a level all of us know and love. Upon dropping into the mission, everything is misty. You can't see anything and everything just seems off. You start to notice pelicans and enemy ships crash landed with ominous radio responses echoing throughout the level. Random shots being fired in the background, and at a certain point, if you look to the top of the hills before you make it inside the structure, you see silhouettes that don't look entirely human or entirely Covenant. At this point, the player not only discovers that they and the Covenant aren't alone on these rings, something sinister lingers. This escalates when you enter the structure, silence. Otherwise, from the occasional small firefight between Chief and the Grunts, it's very quiet. In tight corridors, you see Grunts and Jackals gunned down in small rooms. Maybe not gunned down, you aren't sure, but you know regular Marines aren't that barbaric, monstrous, blood all over the walls. And then this. Faction called the Flood is revealed. A zombie-like enemy that takes over a host and becomes a combat form, with infection forms being the little beans you see running around the floor. Now me, a 5 to 6 year old kid at the time, my first time playthrough of the game, I was fucking terrified. and refused to continue this game after the level for a solid couple months before I told my dad to co-op with me in order to finish it. But now in my adult years, this is one of the best reveals to an enemy ever in a video game. For me, the suspense, the uniqueness, the mystery and discovery, it's an all-time feeling. And shortly after, you meet a little robot called 343 Guilty Spark, something called a monitor for this installation, Halo. Again, that discovery comes back. There's more than meets the eye. Now listen, I know this video is supposed to be positive about Halo, but it's known that the second half of this game isn't the greatest outside of the Warthog run at the end. So because of that, I'm gonna skip it. But the reason I'm summarizing the game like this is because if you look at it big picture, you understand what this game was trying to establish. Land on a mysterious ring and try to figure out what it is. Come across weird structures that are clearly built by someone else. Coming across a new enemy that has close ties to the ring, and finally meeting Guilty Spark. This game's whole philosophy was discovery. It is what this game does best, and why it's mega successful. People played Halo because they felt like they could escape into this foreign world and feel important. To feel a sense of discovery not many games were giving at the time, especially for FPSs. It's why it changed the landscape for FPSs to come. It gave a story that, although had its corny moments, was amazing in terms of showing and not telling. It's what keeps gamers playing this game 2.5 decades later. Halo 2, the cooler younger brother. When people think of Halo lore and how it evolved to what it is now, they attribute that to the monumental success of Halo 2. Where CE built the foundation, what Halo should be, Halo 2 became the structure. Halo 2, as I have gone farther into depth with my retrospective video that is years old by now, if you want to watch that, link in the description below, had an extremely stressful development, with people staying in the office for hours and hours on end, away from their families, to the point where some devs were straight up sleeping at work. This was caused by overambition and lack of technology to support it. If you guys didn't know, Halo 2 was supposed to be the end, at least that we know of, for Halo as a whole, I think. Halo 3 ended up finishing the story, but Halo 3's entire story, elongated, was supposed to be the entire last quarter of Halo 2. But Halo wouldn't be Halo if it played out that way, wouldn't it? Halo 2's biggest assets must be its badassery and narrative. The two things that they absolutely needed to build upon for Halo 2 to be successful. CE had those moments for sure, but it was at specific moments. It wasn't necessarily its strength. To understand why Halo 2 is so badass, we must talk about its narrative, the thing that made Halo 2 one of the best games ever made. Right off the bat, one of the more surprising and welcomed additions to the narrative is the inclusion of the Covenant set of things, fleshing them out and giving them motive. Back in CE, all we knew was that these guys were aliens and they didn't like humanity. It was just see and shoot kind of mentality with these guys. You didn't think more than that. And it was typical with FPSs at that time. But here, you see the Covenant are a collective. They fall under a religious belief system. It makes sense. A covenant. They think that the rings we see in CE are a religious artifact. Sacred rings. But what makes it so much better is you see the direct result of your actions from the first game. The ring is destroyed, and this lone elite is one to blame. He was the leader of the Covenant fleet that followed the Pillar of Autumn after its escape from Reach. He's branded and shamed in front of the entire Covenant in the holy city of High Charity. This opening is so iconic for many reasons. For one, which I already mentioned, this is a direct result of Master Chief's actions in the first game. Your actions in the first game mattered. There's a sequence of events here. Keep that point in the back of your mind, a point that seems to be missing in later installments. Juxtaposition helps this prologue very well. Opposing the elite getting branded and labeled, Master Chief, Sergeant Johnson, and Captain Keyes' daughter have a ceremony for the heroics that took place in the first game. Again, actions mattered.
I can no longer command ships, lead troops into battle.
Not as you are, no, but become the Arbiter. And you shall be set loose against this heresy with our blessing.
What of the Council?
The tasks you must undertake as the Arbiter are perilous, suicidal. You will die, as each Arbiter has before you. The Council will have their corpse.
What would you have your Arbiter do?
Now, this is what surprised most people. Being able to play as the Arbiter, understanding deeper what makes the Covenant tick. Forced religion, check. Take out people who disagree with you, check. Leaders who lie to keep leadership and order over their government, also check. It works because although we see these creatures as alien, their governmental structure is human. You don't necessarily relate, but you can understand easy as to why they run things like they do. And while the Arbiter's storyline goes on, you start to understand the story they're trying to tell. It all starts with taking out the heretic leader. The heretic leader gets a hold of 343 Guilty Spark, who somehow survived the blast of the first Halo ring, and with that comes the truth of what the Halo rings are meant to do, at least for the Covenant side of things of how they understand. To take out the Flood's food, dooming the existence of the entire galaxy to stop the onslaught of the parasite. You understand that this story will go down the road of the Arbiter figuring out they're lied to, the Great Journey is nothing but a fantasy, not even a fantasy, just a deadly lie. And with that, the Great Schism with the elites being pushed out and murdered by the brutes. At the time of the release, I think a lot of people didn't appreciate playing as the Arbiter in the Covenant. They just wanted to play as a Master Chief and shoot Covenant foes. But with time and age, people appreciate the story Bungie was trying to tell. It deepens the lore of the entire Halo universe. It makes things more complicated, for lack of a better word. The Covenant isn't just some brainless alien faction that hates humans for the sake of hating them. They have a specific goal in mind. They're religious zealots who don't understand common sense, at least from a human point of view. It's an understandable belief system. And later on, we get to know even more about how the Covenant is run, but as of Halo 2, they built off the first game very well. On Chief's side of things, it's more of what you might expect. Take out Covenant, find out another Halo ring, and confront the Prophet of Regret. The best part comes after.
What is that?
I am a monument to all your sins.
One of the coolest things in this game is the introduction of the Grave Mind, the central intelligence of the Flood with a capital I in intelligence. Like, this thing is crazy smart. A morphed, longer living version of the one we saw in the first Halo with Captain Keyes inside it. The Gravemind talks in riddles, essentially. Speaks in a certain rhythm. It gives you uneasiness. Clearly it knows more than the player. A lot of people back then complained about why the Gravemind didn't play a bigger role in Halo 2. It was supposed to, which I can understand why people were upset, but you can't deny the awe factor that this cutscene gave. After this, Chief and Arby go different ways trying to find the key to fire the ring. Eventually, it is Arby that's the one that secures the key, along with Keyes and Sergeant Johnson, and stop Tartarus, which is the leader of the brutes, from turning it and dooming everyone. And of course, at the end, we know the huge cliffhanger, with Chief echoing his signature line. Going into that cliffhanger ending, that was brutal back in the day. Again, now that time has passed, I think I love it. Would I rather have the original version that Bungie had? Yeah, of course I would. But in the manner they gave us, that cliffhanger ending had all players excited for the next installment in the franchise. If they didn't have that ending, I doubt Halo 3 would have been the headline on every news station as it was. But let's talk about discovery and badassery for Halo 2. Identity. What did Halo 2 add, identity-wise, that makes it unique and different from the first game? How did it evolve? It literally just added more of what worked in CE, and at least for Halo as a franchise, that's all it needed and should have added. Talking about discovery as a pillar, the first game did it perfectly. Having the player come up with questions themselves rather than things being told to them. For example, like I said before, the first structure you come across in the level Halo, Cortana says dialogue, but it's extremely vague. This gives a way for the player to actively think about what they just saw and come up with questions. In Halo 2, as expected, convey this sense of discovery with narrative. For instance, the introduction of the Gravemind, the inner workings of the Covenant while playing as the Arbiter, understand what exactly these forerunners are, even understanding the workings of the Flood to some degree. And this is shown at the very beginning of the game with cutscenes showing the Arbiter before anything else, showing what happened on the Covenant side after the first game. It makes the player think, oh, this is what they're like. It's a different set of discovery, but discovery nonetheless. It's like you have questions in the first game and they're immediately answered in the second game, and it gives you that sense in your brain of discovery like, oh shit, okay, this makes sense. I love it. And with the Gravemind, you start to understand bits and pieces of the Forerunners. For instance, the Gravemind mentions that those who built the ring knew what they wrought and do not mistake their intent, essentially saying the Forerunners fucked up and had to build these rings as a last resort just in case there was no option left. And even going back further to the mission, Delta Halo, it's a surprise to find out that there is another Halo ring. There are more out there, which begs the question, how bad did the flood outbreak get to where the Forerunners had to build these many rings? The biggest thing I love about Halo 2 is the fact that they build upon the first game so well. After getting done with the first game, that although was super fun in terms of narrative, it was kind of bare bones. I contribute this to ambition, almost too much. They wanted to expand everything. They realized, holy shit, we just struck gold here. So to make this next game better, of course they would want to improve on the lore and storytelling. Frankly, I'm surprised on how much they improved in that regard. It's my favorite Halo because of that alone. The best story in the series. Some may argue it's Halo 3, but no, it's Halo 2. And speaking of improvement, they made the game even more badass than the last, really hammering home that second pillar. Yes, this story can be serious at times. It's kind of more serious than the first game, if I'm honest, but they never wavered from what the identity in the first game was. Halo 2 has some of the funniest, most badass, and coolest one-liners in the series. Here's a cut-up of all of the funny and cool shit in this game. You'll be surprised how much there is.
You know how expensive this gear is, son?
Tell that to the Covenant.
Oh, Johnson, when you gonna tell me how you made it back home in one piece?
Sorry, Guns. It's classified.
My ass! Well, you can forget about those adjustments to your A2 scope.
Sir, permission to leave the station.
For what purpose, Master Chief?
To give the Covenant back their bomb.
Permission granted.
Oh, I know what the ladies like.
See this look? It's terror!
I give you permission to bitch. For a brick, he flew pretty good.
Could we possibly make any more noise? I guess so.
You dog-legged son of a bitch!
Dear Sarge, kicking ass in outer space, wish you were here.
I heard that, jackass.
Look at me when I'm talking to you.
We kicked their asses!
Boo. They have shed our brother's blood, and for that they must die.
Sir, finishing this fight.
There was a foundation in Combat Evolved in Halo 2, and it built upon it. There is a clear identity and cohesiveness, regardless of the cut content and overambition. And then there's Halo 3, the game that put a stamp on the trilogy. One of the most famous, or infamous if you worked retail at the time, games that have ever been released. Remember when everyone was waiting in front of their local GameStop, Target, Walmart, literally everyone. If you were first in line, you were the luckiest individual in your city. Well, with all of that came insane expectations, and it exceeded them. Halo 3 put a stamp on the series with an incredible narrative, which many argue is the best in the series has ever gotten. I would agree if Halo 2 didn't exist. I think what contributed to making Halo 3 so great was honestly the PR budget. Before Halo 3's release, do you remember these cool-ass commercials, like the Believe commercial, Mountain Dew partnerships, the cool-ass commercial with ODSTs, and let's not forget the NRGs that were going on during the time. We also can't talk about Halo 3 without talking about its music. Of course, music in the other games is such as Halo 2 and ODST, but honestly, nothing compares to Halo 3. Marty O'Donnell, the king of video game OSTs, made banger after banger. Tracks such as This Is the Hour, one of the most badass songs ever made, really gets your blood pumping during high intensity moments against insurmountable odds type shit. And then you have Farthest Outpost, a track that gives you a sense of discovery, wink wink, a common theme. And of course, this track plays when everyone gets teleported to the Ark. And later on in the track, it has that classic badass feel of going to wreck shit up. The track One Final Effort, a sort of revised version of This Is the Hour, which includes the famous Warthog Run theme that plays in CE. A lot of tracks play on that same rhythm, including Keep What You Steal. This plays when you finally retrieve Cortana from the flood-infected High Charity. It's such a memorable track because the entire game sort of leads up to the very moment to keep the promise. And never forget the famous main menu song we all know and love. The song that plays when you're up past midnight, have school that very next morning. But it doesn't matter because you're having the time of your life playing Halo 3 with your best friends. It brings so many memories. And lastly, finish the fight. Remember the track I played at the beginning of the video? The note that we all get a sense of nostalgia and heavy emotion from? This is the song. In my opinion, the best song from the OST. It encapsulates all of Halo 3 so well. The song we think of when we boot up Halo 3 for the millionth time. Halo 3's soundtrack is in the top 3 all time, and it isn't 3 or 2. Sometimes, man, I even bump this when I'm going to the gym. It gets me hyped, but also, the OST is full of emotion. It genuinely feels like a buildup of what we experienced until this very moment. Halo 3's OST was something special. And it just feels like every Halo 343 has made feels like pale imitations, trying to copy the previous games but not evolving it, making it their own, hopefully in the future. Alright, the narrative. It picks up right where we left off in Halo 2. Chief jumping off the key ship after leaving Cortana on High Charity, landing on the surface of the Earth, boom, it kicks off there. Halo 3's campaign is something special. It isn't as long as the other two, it isn't as badass as Halo 2, and it doesn't have nearly the amount of goofiness that Combat Evolved provided. But Halo 3 for damn sure makes up for that in immersion, heights, and emotion. Halo 3 is the pinnacle of the series. As it was in the TV ads, we're finishing the fight. Halo 3 gave us a sense of urgency and a sense of belief that we could survive the Covenant onslaught of Earth and to end the Flood for good. Missions like the Storm, here we're defending Earth to the very end, trying to figure out what the Covenant are doing here specifically. You and your Marine buddies mount up on some warthogs and mongooses, and all of a sudden a scarab appears. It's a level of survival, trying to not get obliterated by the scarab, while also trying to take out its legs and board the thing. In Halo 2, taking out the scarab was a scripted segment, more or less, but here it's actual gameplay, which makes this level even more of a treat. Not to mention all the fails where the Marines will fire off a rocket into the ground without warning and blow the mongoose up, and also the level Floodgate, where the Flood appears on Earth for the very first time. Now, don't ask me how the entire human race survived such a thing, crazy to me, but just the cool factor here, and the horror. For example, we encounter a Marine quite similar to the one we saw back in CE, the one that was rambling and shooting at Chief. This Marine doesn't shoot at Chief, but you see clearly that this was meant as a callback. And probably the best level to have ever been made for Halo, the Covenant. The mission where you go from ground, Warthog, tank, then to Hornet, take out 2 scarabs with the Hornet, then back to ground again. And not only that, towards the end of the level, you end up having a brief alliance with the Flood. When I played this game for the first time, I couldn't believe it. Brief being the keyword here, only if it was like maybe 4 minutes of game time. The moment was cool and memorable. That's how you know you made a banger of a mission. In terms of the actual story the game tells, although shorter than the previous 2 Halo games, it hits you hard. Not necessarily to the point of, let's say, Red Dead Redemption and Cyberpunk, obviously, but there are some story points that get that emotion out of you. For one, this story is about finishing the fight. Finishing the fight between humans, Covenant, Flood, everything. And with that, you'll expect some deaths from important characters. Emotion because the story you grew up with is ending. Everything is heightened. Even just the beginning of the game where Cortana does her monologue about how she picked Chief, with the beautiful music playing and him crashing to the ground. This frankly non-important intro carries emotion because it picks off right after the second game. The game that had the incredibly abrupt cliffhanger. It's that feeling of holy shit, we're back. But also, you remember, oh, Cortana's still on High Charity. When are we going to get her back? And you expect to get her soon after, but it takes the entire game. The lead up only gives you hallucinations and Chief remembering past conversations as well as the promise he made in the first game. So through the entire game, you have that in the back of your mind. It makes it so when Chief eventually does rescue Cortana, there's more weight behind it. Remember the E3 demo for Halo 2? The one where the battle for Earth is a lot more fleshed out? Halo 3 expands on that for, I want to say, the first quarter of the game, maybe even more. And it's pure peak, especially when the portal to the Ark is uncovered. Just watch this cutscene and tell me that this doesn't have you feeling giddy inside.
All ships, fire at will. This is the way the world ends.
Another memorable thing was when the elites and the humans teamed up. They traded weapons, painted their phantoms green. Elites will drop in sometimes during your level. All of it was fantastic and a great way to incorporate gameplay along with story. We know the Great Schism happened, so why not have the elites fight alongside Chief this time around? Also, side note, I love how if you play co-op with multiple people, they play as Arbiter and another elite. No more clone Master Chiefs or Arbiters. I still remember everyone fighting over who got to play as Arbiter or Chief all the times. And who can forget the final stretch of Halo 3? We all know the infamous level Cortana. Yes, the level that frustrates me more than you know, but the emotional baggage behind that level hits hard. Finally getting Cortana back all this time later, keeping our promise. You could tell the Gravemind did a number on her. More than likely, she's on the brink of rampancy. So just finding her there, saving her, and getting her out of High Charity finally, it just felt good, I guess. I don't know how else to explain it. It just felt right, like Chief is finally whole again. Right from that and going into the Warthog run was also a great treat. Halo 2 didn't have one, even though the devs planned on it. It feels like a nice capstone to go back to the roots and have one here. Very fun, lots of memories. And who could forget that ending? With Arbiter landing on Earth, meeting up with the rest of the humans at the memorial at New Mombasa, walking up to Lord Hood, then recognizing they would have lost the war if not for the cooperation from both sides, and then pondering on Chief. Is he dead?
Were it so easy.
Chief at the end, wake me when you need me. It all just fits so well. Perfect ending to a perfect trilogy, and a trilogy I'll never forget. And I think this is when we talk about how all three pillars come together. Here at the climax of it all. From a discovery aspect, the game follows suit from the first game. Wide open levels in which you can take different avenues to get to your objective, as well as learning new lore that changes everything. One example is the discovery of the Ark, in which the Ark is the place where detonation of all rings take place, as well as the portal being found on Earth. Then you have badassery. You could argue that this entire game is badass, but moments such as fighting alongside the Flood, taking down a Scarab with just a mongoose and another Marine, taking out multiple Scarabs with a Hornet, infiltrating Flood-infected High Charity alone and coming out alive. All those things you could classify as badass. And let's not forget the return of the Warthog run. And finally, I think the entire last half of the game relies on emotion more than anything. I guess from the moment you step foot on the Ark, seeing the hallucinations of Cortana, finally stopping the Covenant and winning the war, finally finding Cortana and fulfilling the promise Chief made to her, and wiping out the Flood for good. And although we know Chief isn't dead, the conversation that Arbiter and Lord Hood have together, that was emotional. Because at that moment, at least when the game was released, no one knew what happened to Chief. And when we do finally see what happened, he goes back into cryosleep, unknown to us when we'll ever see him again. This whole game was a roller coaster for everyone, and it still is a roller coaster today. The original trilogy exceeded expectations, and whenever we play another Halo game, that game will forever be compared to the three games we all know and love. So that brings me to this. What happened? What happened to the series we all know and love? Aside from the fact that 343 Industries took over, there is a specific reason why Halo changed for the worst. And that reason is retcons. Unfortunately, and there's a specific retcon that honestly derailed it all. And I think y'all know what I'm talking about. And I should warn you right now, under any circumstances, do not go to the Halo subreddit or the Halo Stories subreddit for any information. All you'll find is people either coping, people complaining about the topic being even brought up, or just straight up stating false information. For the most part, at least. If you need more of an explanation as to how this retcon really screwed things up, I'm gonna link a couple videos down in the description below. I don't have the maker of the video at the top of my head, I don't know the name, but I'm gonna put it at the top left screen. I'm gonna put their username, link in the description below. You guys, once you watch that video, you're gonna understand so much more. But to explain briefly, throughout the entire series, it has been brought up multiple times, or at least alluded to, that humans were the direct descendants of Forerunners. Guilty Spark brings it up, Truth and Regret bring it up, the Halo rings have weather functionality extremely similar to the conditions humans need for survival, the portal to the Ark being on Earth, and the term Reclaimer constantly being brought up. It wasn't subtle. You just had to pay a little bit more attention to dialogue. The retcon occurs in Halo 3 within the terminals found on the Ark. These terminals you have to go out of your way to find. These aren't like main story stuff. Like, I think you guys know what I'm talking about when I talk about terminals. Any Halo fan knows. Well, one terminal, I should say, kind of retconned everything. Only one. These terminals were written by Damien Isla, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, Robert McLeese, Rob Stokes, and none other than Frankie O'Connor. We all know who that last person is. The lead creative director in the 343 series for Halo, other than Infinite. In these terminals, there was a huge retcon in which the entire series was based on. It stated that the Forerunners were not human, or didn't directly state that, but it like alluded to that they weren't. They were a different race entirely. Now, later down the line, they tried to defuse this retcon in which they stated some dumb excuse like they're just a long distant cousin of one another or something like that. Now, why is this such a huge deal, and why does it affect the entire series after Bungie's departure? Because it tears down the entire foundation of what this series was built from. Discovery, badassery, and emotion. Not so much badassery and emotion, but specifically discovery. It really destroyed that first pillar. It all started with the first game, coming across this ring that filled you with questions, coming across the structure for the first time in the ring. How on earth humans can interact with them in the first place? Guilty Spark being weird when it comes to the Forerunners and who they are exactly. The second game, with the Covenant revering the Forerunners as gods, humans being called Reclaimers, Delta Halo structures looking exactly like old human architecture. And finally in Halo 3, the portal to the Ark literally being on Earth. Coming across the Ark itself, Truth insinuating the entire thing, and fucking 343 Guilty Spark literally saying it to us that we are Forerunner. It fundamentally takes away the sense of tragic irony and the feeling of discovery that we felt from the previous game. It takes away everything we're told, and it makes the questions we asked along the way meaningless. Along my time playing Halo 4 and how quickly the Prometheans were introduced, the reveal of the Didact, and how jarring it was seeing that he was something else entirely, you just say to yourself, this isn't what I thought it would be. I don't mind Halo 4 as a story, but the way they tell it and the way they show things and the way how the lore changed drastically, that's what I don't like. And I think this sparked the main issue with the series as a whole. They can't stick to a plot. Halo 4 to Halo 5 and then to Infinite, there isn't direct continuation game to game. Plot threads usually end in books or other mediums. To go on a bigger tangent, doing this kind of thing is one of the worst things you can do to a franchise. The only successful way of doing this is using those mediums to flesh out previous lore and build new lore that's not directly tied to a main game. Not to finish up plot points intended for a later game, or start new ones in which we pick up later in the next game, or with little to no explanation. This is why I hated Halo 5. This thing started out with Locke, which his origin story stated in the awful Halo Nightfall movie. Not only was he a bad character and that plot thread was useless, as he isn't going to be in the series anymore, I don't think, but they also start this plot thread of Cortana all of a sudden starting an AI uprising, which, let's not forget, totally negated the very emotional moment when her and Chief said their goodbyes back in Halo 4. And that crumbles the emotion pillar. Let's not forget that. It's like the series after Reach, they didn't know what they wanted to be, and that's the problem. They abandoned the sense of discovery, at least for me when it comes to 4 and 5. Nothing in that game comes close to the feeling I once had. The art style changed, and everything seemed off. Nothing seemed cohesive. In Halo 5, they just abandoned the good that was in Halo 4 with worse. The Locke vs. Chief thing was unnecessary. It wasn't badass. It was just, yeah, they fight for a little bit, then they kiss and make up. It was just weird. The Cortana AI uprising thing, while interesting, didn't capitalize on what could have been. It also just takes away the emotional aspect of Halo 4, like I said before. And as you're coming to realize, 343's games don't use all 3 pillars like the original trilogy did. In Halo 4, they had badassery and emotion, but didn't capitalize on discovery. Halo 5 had badassery, I guess, if you think the Chief and Locke thing was badass, and fighting the same boss 5 times was badass, but they dropped the ball with the lack of emotion and subpar discovery. I genuinely think that 343 tried too hard with its narrative at times, if I'm honest, which may be a hot take. They tried so hard to make their retcons canon and to make their own story that it fucked up their focus. Halo, although is a narrative FPS, focused more on discovery, badassery, and emotion. Bungie at the time didn't try to tie up loose ends with books and comics. You could say the book that Joe Staten made after 2, and it kind of closed the gap between 2 and 3, you didn't need to read that to understand it. It was just more of like, hey, if you want to know more of the story, read this, but you can play 2 to 3 directly if you really want to. Whatever medium they did in Bungie's verse of Halo, the mediums, you didn't need to consume them narratively before playing the next game. 343 decided before Halo 4 that, hey, we should totally release a trilogy of books to make this previous retcon canon, so by the time the next game releases, people won't be confused. You just can't do that in the gaming industry anymore. And any industry, honestly, it just makes players confused and mad at the fact you changed something that wasn't even broken in the first place. Instead of using what worked, you tried to reinvent what Halo is. Essentially a soft reboot when it didn't need one. But there is hope for Halo. Hot take. I'm one of the few who loved Infinite. That game went back to its roots and decided to build the foundation again. Discovery, badassery, and emotion. With the new open world in Halo Infinite, I think it works with Halo as a series perfectly because, as you would think, it's based within the foundation of what Halo was built off. Discovery. You come across multiple things in the game. With mission objectives you can tackle in various ways. The art style goes back to what it once was, which allows familiarity to come back into the picture. The Forerunner architecture going back to normal. It just brings a tad of nostalgia that works with the Halo series. Not to mention the introduction of the Endless, which totally spikes the feeling of discovery in the game. Take a shot for how many times I had to say discovery in this video. Yeah, you'll probably be in the hospital. Anyways, the bottom line I'm trying to get at is Halo has hope right now. Some hope. I understand right now things are dark. We have no idea when Halo 7 is going to release, and we have no idea if the Combat Evolve remake is going to be good. We have no idea if they're going to capitalize on the Endless storyline. But we can say that there is some sense of hope. The rebranding of 343 into Halo Studios, the total gutting of leadership there to some degree. You feel like, hey, maybe they understand Halo again. But that's wishful thinking. And all I can say now is, I miss what Halo used to be. And with that, hope you guys liked that little Halo video. I kind of worked a long time on it. Took a while. I built a new computer. I got a new position at my work. I traveled a little bit. That's why it took quite a bit of time, but I'm glad I got through this video. Halo really does mean a lot to me. It's one of my favorite series of all time, and I just get upset when this new Halo trajectory gets messy and doesn't follow its pillars correctly, with retcon after retcon and plot points being tied up in books or just not being tied up at all. It's a dark time for Halo fans, and I want to be hopeful for the first time in a while, and I think with the rebranding and everything, with the remake going on for Combat Evolved, there's a sliver there. I want them to capitalize on that, I really do. Anyways, hopefully new videos soon. It won't take 2 months to make and release. Hopefully this video wasn't too tangent-y, or hopefully you guys understood and followed a guideline of sorts. I don't know, I'm just kind of ranting right now, but anyways, thank you guys for watching. Hopefully Halo is great and we get a better look at what the remake will be in October, which is this month. So see you guys later. Peace out.